Chrisanne Moxley was 19 years old, and for the last couple of years she'd hit a rough patch, as her mama liked to call it. She'd dropped out of school, started hanging around the wrong kind of crowd. Been drinking, and not just a little bit either. Her daddy said she'd been acting crazier than a wet cat. And it was true. She'd written it off as teenage stuff until the night she got arrested for a hit-and-run accident. The mama in the car had been hurt real bad, and when she was sentenced to house arrest, her lawyer told her that she should get on her knees and thank her lucky stars, and that he didn't want to hear her name come up again. Chrisanne Moxley was not the kind of girl who was easily tamed. She had a wild spirit, and yeah, it might not have been used in a useful way, she'd admit that, but she was never going to be a house cat either. She knew she had to find where responsibility and creativity could meet in the middle, and that's why she got her GED and started attending an online film school. She was on house arrest after all, and she figured that it might do her some good to make some use of the time. Her parents seemed to be proud of her for choosing this direction. In all honesty, they probably would have been proud of most anything she'd chosen to do, as long as it kept her walking a straight line and kept her out of trouble. She was assigned a group assignment that required 4 students to work together on creating a storyline for a short film that another group would film and another edit, and so on and so on. And her group was Alicia. She had a pixie cut, freckles on her nose, brown eyes, and round glasses. Then there was Franny, who was tall and blonde. She had a large nose, sharp features, but a mouth like a rosebud. Next was a guy who introduced himself as Seven. He said that had been his nickname since birth, that his parents had had 6 children called it quits, but the Lord or the universe, or just plain pure luck, had something else in store for them, and along he came, pulling up the rear. 7 years younger than the next child, and 18 years apart from the oldest, the siblings all called him Seven, and that was that. The group became quick friends. Alicia was quick-witted, and Franny was slow to catch on, which made her a fine target for being teased by Chrisanne, and Seven was the introspective, brilliant one who was bound to be the Kubrick of the group. After a couple of weeks, Chrisanne and Seven began chatting separate from the group. He was the only one who knew that she was on house arrest. One night he asked if he could see her ankle bracelet, and she laughed. She pulled up her leg in front of the computer's camera to show him the thin black strap that looked more like an Apple Watch, really, not like the chunky one she'd seen on TV. He was a good listener, and she found herself spilling out all that he ever wanted to know about her. His dad was a truck driver, and he didn't get to see him real often. His mama was in a nursing home. He didn't say why, and Chrisanne didn't ask. The two soon began to flirt. He had brown hair, cut high and tight like her daddy's, full lips, a little beard growth, almost always wore a hoodie. Before long, Chrisanne began to have feelings for Seven. He had shown her pictures of his siblings and his dad, one of both his parents standing on a beach. His mom's head was thrown back in laughter, and his daddy was looking at her as if she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Seven was proud of his dad. He was a hard-working man, he said. Sacrificed a lot for his family. His mom had run a daycare from her home to bring in some extra money. Every Thursday, Chrisanne had to go to counseling, and today was Thursday. She'd told Seven that she'd be gone for most of the day. Her mom would take her to lunch after her counseling, and she was allowed to be gone for a few hours if she was accompanied by one of her parents. When they returned home, there was a box sitting at their front door. It had Chrisanne's name written on it, and Love 7 written underneath. She opened the box, and it was a plush white teddy bear. The gesture was so sweet. The card read, "Hold my hand when you're lonely." Chrisanne ran up to her room, placed the bear on her pillow, and got onto her computer. Seven noticed the bear in the background right away. "You got it," he exclaimed, and she thanked him profusely. It hadn't even crossed her mind that she'd never given him her address. Her feelings for Seven began to increase, and he told her that he was feeling the same way. The difficult part was, obviously, that she was under house arrest. They couldn't go on actual dates, but they did find fun things like they'd make blue box macaroni and cheese and drink Dr. Pepper from wine glasses while on the computer, and she was so grateful that she'd found someone who could look past her past and what she'd been arrested for. Late into the night on December 12th, she was complaining to her daddy about how she felt that her sentence was just way too long, and that she wished the family hadn't pressed so hard for her to serve maximum time. Her father reminded her that she was lucky that she wasn't in prison, and to grow up and take responsibility. You're not the victim here, Chrisanne. A woman lost her entire way of life because of that accident. Her family lost the mother they knew, and her husband had to take 2 jobs to pay for the care of the mother. And while she knew that he was right, she cried like a baby. She was somewhat of a spoiled brat, she might admit. She'd suffered long enough, she demanded. She was trying to change her life too, you know, and her father walked out of the room and slammed the door, but not before saying, "I'm really disappointed in you, Chrissy." Chrisanne immediately got into a chat with Seven and began to complain about her father, but after 5 full minutes of her voice rattling on, she realized that Seven hadn't said a word. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes, I'm fine. I'm just worried about you." For a split second, Chrisanne thought the word worry didn't seem like quite the right response, but before she could think it through, her screen went black. "Damn it," she declared, as she tried to restart the thing. Nothing worked, not even pressing the power button. Then it popped back up, and on her screen was someone wearing a rabbit costume. It was tall, furry, wearing a blue vest. Its eyes were wide and happy. There was a white background, and the bunny did a little jig to some eerie music. Chrisanne couldn't take her eyes off this visual for some reason. Then she suddenly heard voices. "Bunny, bunny, bunny." They were chanting. They were adult voices. A message popped up on Chrissy's screen that read, "Paid in full." She didn't really pay much attention to it as she clicked out of it, but as soon as she realized that she could click out, she tried to exit the page, and that's when the rabbit began to talk. "Welcome to the bedroom." What? Thought Chrisanne. What in the hell is this? "I'm your host for tonight's festivities." And someone rolled in an ancient TV and placed it next to the rabbit. There she was. Her back, anyway. She was facing her computer. She turned and saw the stuffed bunny that Seven had given her. Its eyes black, with a red dot in the middle. She swung her chair back around to look at the screen. "My name is Jack Scratch." Someone threw him a cane, and he began swinging it around, and the crowd became louder and louder. "Jack Scratch, watch your back. Jack Scratch, watch your back." The picture on the TV zoomed in on her. As she swung back around, she jumped up to grab the bunny, and as she took a hold of it, she heard, "That woman you hit while you were drunk? That was my mother." It was almost a whisper. She was sure the crowd on the computer couldn't hear it through their voices. Many people were typing, "Jack Scratch, get her Scratch, 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 Jack." scratch. She heard a scraping noise outside of her bedroom window, and her body froze. Her parents weren't home. She picked up her cell phone, but there was no service. She thought as quickly as she could, and she ran into her bathroom, grabbing an alcohol swab from its box and ripping the paper protector. She rubbed it on her ankle monitor, knowing that it would alert the police, and she locked the door. Jack Scratch. Jack Scratch. Jack Scratch was chanting from her computer as she heard the scratching noise on the bathroom door, and then the sickening sound of the door being kicked in. Jack Scratch. When the police arrived, there was no clear way to identify Chrisanne. They would definitely need dental records. The monitor had been cut off along with her foot. For a couple of days, the monitor would still ping. It was traveling west, until one day a SWAT team caught up with it at its final destination, 1,200 miles away. A film school was having their premiere night. The most talked about short film, The Bunny. The awards were given posthumously to the students who had created it, except for one student, and as it turned out, 7 had never actually been registered at the school.